Deep in the frozen silence of the Norwegian forest, a desperate decision led a beautiful woman into the territory of a beast. She expected a swift end, but instead found a dark bargain that would change her life forever. Before we start, please like, subscribe, and comment where you are watching from. If you want exclusive and spicy stories, become a member by clicking the join button below. And to help us, swipe the comments to the left and double tap Hypar. Let's start. The year was 1902, and the winter in Norway was unforgiving, covering the world in a thick blanket of white snow. Ingrid, a beautiful woman of 24 years, moved silently through the dense trees, her breath visible in the freezing air. Her village was starving, and desperation had pushed her far beyond the safe boundaries of the community hunting grounds. She knew the legends of the forbidden territory, but hunger was a stronger motivator than fear on this cold morning. Ingrid gripped her bow tightly, her delicate hands trembling slightly from the biting chill that seeped through her gloves. She had spotted a large deer, a prize that could feed her family for weeks, and she was determined not to lose it. She followed the tracks deep into the ancient forest, ignoring the carved wooden markers that warned intruders to turn back immediately. The silence here was heavier, an oppressive weight that made the beautiful woman feel watched by unseen eyes. Unknown to her, she was indeed being observed from the high vantage point of a rocky ridge. Viggo, known as the Ice Bear, watched the intruder with a calculating gaze, his brown eyes narrowing as he assessed the threat. Viggo was a mountain of a man, standing nearly 2 meters tall with shoulders that blocked out the sun. His body was a fortress of dense, defined muscles honed by years of survival in the harsh wilderness, and he tolerated no trespassers. He moved through the snow with unnatural silence for a man of his immense size and power. His messy blonde hair blended with the pale winter light, and his strong square jaw was set in a grim line of determination. Ingrid finally spotted the deer grazing near a frozen stream and raised her bow, aiming with practiced care. Before she could release the arrow, a massive shadow engulfed her, and a hand as heavy as stone clamped onto her shoulder. She gasped and spun around, dropping her bow as she looked up, and up, into the face of the most terrifying man she had ever seen. Viggo towered over her, his muscular chest rising and falling slowly, radiating an intense heat. "You are on land that does not belong to you, little thief," Viggo rumbled, his voice deep like shifting tectonic plates. He looked at the beautiful woman, noting her fear but also the defiant spark in her brown eyes. Ingrid tried to back away, but his grip was iron, holding her in place without causing pain. She stared at his massive arms, where muscles coiled under his thick tunic, realizing she had no hope of escaping this giant. "I needed food," Ingrid whispered, her voice shaking as she tried to maintain her dignity before him. "My village is starving." "I did not mean to insult the master of these woods, but I had no other choice." Viggo studied her face, struck by how the cold had flushed her pale cheeks with a lovely pink. He had lived in solitude for a decade, building his strength and his home, but he had never taken a wife. He made a decision then, one that surprised even him, driven by instinct and a deep, primal need. Instead of dragging her to the sheriff for poaching, which meant prison, he saw a different path for them both. "The law of the mountain is harsh, and the penalty for theft is severe," Viggo stated, his brown eyes locking onto hers. "But I am the law here. And I have a different sentence in mind for you." He lifted her easily, throwing her over his broad, muscular shoulder as if she weighed nothing at all. Ingrid screamed and pounded on his back, but his body was like a rock wall, solid and unyielding against her small fists. Viggo carried her through the forest for miles, his stamina endless until they reached a large, fortified cabin. It was built from massive logs, sturdy and imposing, much like the man who had constructed it with his own bare hands. He brought her inside and set her down near the roaring fireplace, locking the heavy wooden door behind them. The heat of the fire warmed her instantly, but the intensity of his gaze made her shiver for a different reason. "You have two choices," Viggo said, crossing his thick, muscular arms over his chest. I can take you back to town, where you will rot in a cell for poaching on private land. Or you can stay here." Ingrid rubbed her arms, looking at the beautiful fire and then back at the formidable man. "Stay here, as a servant? I do not understand what you want from me, or why you have not turned me in." Viggo took a step closer, his tall frame dominating the small room, his presence overwhelming. "Not a servant. I have built a kingdom, but have no one to leave it to. I need an heir. A son of my blood." The beautiful woman widened her eyes, realizing the implication of his words and the dark bargain he was offering. "You want me to bear your child? That is your condition for my freedom, to be a mother? You will give me a strong son," Viggo declared, his voice leaving no room for argument or negotiation. "You stay until the task is done. Once the child is born and weaned, you are free to go or stay." Ingrid looked at the door, then at the dangerous, muscular man who offered her a strange kind of mercy. The alternative was prison and leaving her family to starve, while this offered survival, food, and a chance at life. "I accept," she whispered, her heart pounding against her ribs like a trapped bird. She watched as Viggo's expression softened slightly, the tension in his powerful shoulders releasing just a fraction at her words. That evening, the cabin felt smaller as the reality of their arrangement settled heavily between them. Viggo moved with surprising grace, preparing a meal of roasted meat and root vegetables, placing a full plate before her. "Eat," he commanded gently, his brown eyes watching her with a mix of possession and curiosity. "You are too thin. A mother must be strong and healthy to carry a child of my lineage." Ingrid ate, the food tasting better than anything she had had in months, warming her from the inside out. She watched his strong hands, noting how careful he was with the plates, contradicting his terrifying size. When night fell, the atmosphere shifted, becoming thick with anticipation and a strange, nervous energy. Viggo led her to the bedroom, where a large bed covered in thick furs dominated the space, looking warm and inviting. He stood by the bed, his tall, muscular form illuminated by the soft glow of a candle. Ingrid hesitated by the doorway, her beautiful face pale, her hands clasping her dress as she tried to find her courage. "I will not hurt you," Viggo said, his voice dropping to a low rumble that vibrated in the air. "This is not about force, it is about life. Come here, Ingrid. Let us begin our pact." She stepped forward, drawn by the strange magnetism of this powerful, solitary man of the mountains. When he reached out to touch her cheek, his calloused fingers were incredibly gentle against her soft skin. Viggo admired her beauty, his thumb tracing the line of her jaw with a reverence she did not expect. He was a man of the wild, but in this moment, he treated her like a precious, fragile treasure. "You are beautiful," he murmured, his brown eyes searching hers for any sign of revulsion. Instead, he found curiosity, and perhaps the same spark of attraction that was igniting a fire within his own chest. Ingrid felt a shiver that had nothing to do with the cold as his large hand rested on her waist. His touch was warm and firm, making her feel small and protected, a sensation she had never experienced before. They lay down together, the furs soft beneath them, the candle flickering and casting long shadows. Viggo moved slowly, giving her time to adjust to his size and the overwhelming presence of his muscular body next to hers. He kissed her then, a tentative, exploring press of his lips against hers that surprised them both. It wasn't the kiss of a captor, but of a man starving for connection, deep and full of suppressed emotion. Ingrid found herself responding, her hands instinctively moving to rest on his broad, hard shoulders. The fear melted away, replaced by a heat that spread through her veins, driven by his surprising tenderness. In the darkness, the transaction they had agreed upon began to feel like something entirely different. It was an exploration of skin and breath, a meeting of two lonely souls finding comfort in the warmth of each other. The days that followed fell into a routine that was unexpectedly peaceful and domestic. Viggo spent his mornings checking traps, his strong legs carrying him effortlessly through the deep snow of the forest. Ingrid stayed in the cabin, tending to the fire and exploring the home of her captor. She found carvings of wood, delicate and intricate, depicting animals and trees, revealing a sensitive side to the brute. When he returned, the cabin was warm, and the smell of food greeted him like a welcome embrace. He would look at the beautiful woman working in his kitchen, and a feeling of contentment would settle in his chest. One afternoon, he found her struggling to stretch a hide, her delicate hands not strong enough for the task. Viggo stepped in behind her, his large body enveloping hers as he placed his hands over hers. "Let me show you," he whispered, his chest pressing against her back, his breath warm on her ear. He guided her movements, his strength making the task easy, his proximity making her heart race. "You have strong hands," Ingrid remarked softly, leaning back slightly into his solid muscular frame. "But you are gentle with the leather. You treat everything with care, even things that are dead." "Everything has value," Viggo replied, turning her around so they faced each other, inches apart. "Especially you. You are more than just a vessel, Ingrid. You are becoming the heart of this home." His words hung in the air, sweet and heavy, changing the nature of their relationship. He lifted her onto the table, standing between her knees, his brown eyes locking onto hers with intensity. He kissed her deeply, his hands cupping her face, his thumbs stroking her cheekbones. It was a kiss of longing, of a man who was falling for the woman he had intended only to use. Ingrid wrapped her arms around his thick neck, her fingers tangling in his messy blonde hair. She realized with a start that she no longer wanted to leave, that this strong man had captured her heart. A massive blizzard struck a week later, burying the cabin in snow and howling winds. They were trapped inside, the world outside reduced to white noise and freezing temperatures, isolating them completely. The cold was biting, forcing them to stay in bed under the heavy furs for warmth. They lay tangled together, skin to skin, Viggo's body acting as a massive furnace that kept the beautiful woman safe. "I was called the Ice Bear because I felt nothing," Viggo confessed into the darkness, holding her close. "I thought I needed a son to prove I existed, to leave a mark on this world." Ingrid stroked his muscular chest, feeling the steady, strong beat of his heart beneath her palm. "And now? Do you still feel like ice, Viggo? Do you still feel empty inside?" "No," he said, burying his face in her dark, wavy hair, inhaling her scent. "You have melted the ice. I do not just want a son anymore. I want you. I want this life with you." The confession brought tears to her eyes, and she kissed him with all the love she had been hiding. The storm raged outside, but inside they were safe, bound by a love that had grown from a desperate bargain. Weeks turned into months, and the harsh winter finally began to give way to the thaw of spring. The snow melted, revealing green shoots, and the time for their agreement to conclude was drawing near. Ingrid felt a new anxiety, wondering if he would send her away now that the season had changed. She loved the strong, muscular man, but she feared he might still hold to the original terms of their deal. One morning, Viggo told her to dress in her best clothes, his face unreadable and serious. "We are going to the village," he announced, his voice firm. "It is time to settle things." Ingrid's heart sank, thinking he was taking her back to release her, to end their time together. She followed him silently, her beautiful face sad, her eyes fixed on the broad back of the man she loved. They arrived at the village where people stopped and stared, shocked to see Ingrid alive. Whispers erupted like wildfire. They had assumed she had perished in the woods or been killed by the beast. Viggo walked straight to the town square, his tall, muscular figure commanding immediate attention and fear. He held Ingrid's hand tightly, pulling her to his side, creating a united front against the crowd. The village elder approached, looking from the beautiful woman to the giant man with suspicion. "We thought you dead, girl. And you, Ice Bear. You have no business here unless you are surrendering." Viggo stood tall, his chest expanding as he addressed the crowd with a booming voice. "I am not here to surrender. I am here to make a declaration before you all and before the law." "Ingrid is not a captive," Viggo announced, his voice ringing out with pride and authority. "She is my wife. We are bound by the laws of nature and now by the laws of men." The crowd gasped, shocked by the revelation that the beast had taken a bride. Ingrid looked up at him, tears streaming down her face, realizing he was claiming her publicly, protecting her forever. "She's under my protection," Viggo continued, squeezing her hand reassuringly. "Anyone who questions her honor or her place by my side answers to me. She is the lady of the mountain." Suddenly, a man stepped forward, a hunter named Olaf who had once courted Ingrid unsuccessfully. He was jealous and angry, spitting on the ground near Viggo's boots with a sneer of contempt. "You forced her," Olaf shouted, trying to rally the crowd against the strong outsider. "She is a prisoner. A beauty like her would never choose a beast like you willingly. I challenge you." Viggo's eyes turned cold, his posture shifting into a combat stance, radiating danger. "Ask her," Viggo rumbled, looking down at Ingrid. "Ask her if she stands here by force or by choice." Before Ingrid could speak, Olaf drew a knife, lunging forward with a cry of rage. The crowd screamed, but Viggo moved with the speed of a striking snake, intercepting the attack effortlessly. He caught Olaf's wrist in his massive hand, twisting it until the knife dropped into the mud. Viggo shoved the man back, his strength sending Olaf sprawling into the dirt, defeated and humiliated. "I could break you," Viggo said calmly, standing over the fallen rival, his muscles tense. "But my wife is watching, and she has taught me that mercy is stronger than violence." Ingrid ran to him, throwing her arms around his waist, burying her face in his chest. "I chose him," she shouted to the crowd. "I love him. He is a better man than any of you know." Viggo wrapped his massive arms around her, kissing the top of her head tenderly. The crowd fell silent, witnessing the undeniable love between the beautiful woman and the mountain man. Olaf scrambled away, defeated not just by strength, but by the truth of their bond. The elder nodded slowly, accepting the union, realizing that the ice bear had indeed been tamed. They left the village with their heads held high, hand in hand, returning to the sanctuary of the forest. The walk back was light, filled with laughter and the promise of a future that belonged only to them. As they reached the cabin, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and violet. Viggo lifted her into his arms, carrying her across the threshold as his true wife. "I have a surprise," Ingrid whispered, touching his cheek as he set her down on the bed. "The heir you wanted. I think your wish has been granted. I feel the change within me." Viggo froze, his brown eyes widening with wonder as he placed a large hand on her stomach. He fell to his knees, pressing his face against her belly, overcome with an emotion he could not name. "A child," he murmured, his voice thick with tears of joy. "Our child, made from love, not from a bargain. You have given me everything, Ingrid." They spent the night talking about names, their voices soft in the warmth of the firelight. Viggo promised to build a crib, to expand the cabin, to make a world worthy of their family. The months passed, and the cabin became a home filled with the sounds of life. Viggo was no longer the lonely ice bear. He was a husband, a protector, and soon a father. When the baby was born, a strong boy with his father's eyes and his mother's smile, their joy was complete. Viggo held his son in his massive arms, looking at the beautiful woman who had saved him. They stood on the porch, watching the stars, the baby sleeping soundly against Viggo's broad chest. The past was a distant memory, replaced by the warmth of the present and the hope of tomorrow. May your life be full of blessings if you have already clicked the button below that says subscribe. Next to the subscribe button, after pressing it, you can become a member of the channel by clicking on join, and thus be able to see special and also very spicy stories. A quick and free way to help us is to swipe the comments to the left, where a button that says Hypar will appear, and then press once more on Hypar. This will make our story reach more blessed people like you. And if you liked this story, leave a like and subscribe to the channel.